The transport vessel Meridian's Hope shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Draconos Prime, its hull groaning under the stress of re-entry. Jackson Reeves gripped the safety harness, his knuckles white against the worn leather straps. He wasn't supposed to be here. A simple cargo runner from Earth had no business landing on a world where dragons still ruled the skies. But desperation made allies of unlikely companions, and the Draconian sovereignty had opened their borders to human traders for the first time in 3 centuries. The ship's captain, a grizzled woman named Chen, had warned him about the dragons. "They're proud," she'd said, her weathered face serious. "Ancient beyond measure. They tolerate us because they need our technology, but don't mistake tolerance for friendship. Keep your head down, make your delivery, and get back to the ship." Jackson had nodded, but as the Meridian's Hope touched down on the landing platform carved into the side of a mountain, he felt something stir in his chest. Not fear, but curiosity. The dragons were legends in human space, creatures from Earth's own mythology somehow made real on a world thousands of light years away. Convergent evolution, the scientists claimed, though Jackson had always suspected the universe had a sense of humor. The cargo bay door hissed open, and Jackson stepped out into the thin, crisp air of Draconos Prime. The sky was a deep purple, streaked with clouds that burned orange in the light of the system's binary suns. Massive stone structures dotted the landscape, ancient and majestic, built for beings far larger than humans. His contact was late. Jackson checked his datapad again. The merchant he was supposed to meet should have arrived 20 minutes ago. He leaned against a cargo container, watching a pair of juvenile dragons spiral through the sky in what looked like a game of aerial tag. Their scales caught the light, shimmering like liquid copper. A sound drew his attention, a soft, pained whimper coming from behind a stack of supply crates. Jackson frowned. The landing platform should have been empty except for him and the ship's crew. He approached cautiously, rounding the corner of the containers. What he found made his breath catch. A dragon hatchling, no larger than a terrestrial wolf, lay trapped beneath a fallen cargo net made of heavy industrial cable. One of her wings was bent at an unnatural angle, and her scales, a brilliant jade green, were scraped and bleeding in several places. Her eyes, golden and intelligent, fixed on Jackson with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Jackson's mind raced. The captain's warning echoed in his thoughts. The dragons were proud. Interference, especially with one of their young, could be seen as an insult. But as he looked into those golden eyes, he saw only pain and fear, emotions universal across species. "To hell with it," he muttered. He approached slowly, hands raised, making soft sounds he hoped were soothing. The hatchling tensed but didn't try to flee. Perhaps she couldn't. Jackson knelt beside her, examining the cargo net. The cables were heavy-duty, designed to secure massive containers during spaceflight. How the hatchling had become entangled, he couldn't guess. "Easy," he said softly. "I'm going to get you out." The release mechanism for the net was jammed. The electronic lock fused from what looked like a power surge. Jackson pulled out his multi-tool, working carefully to avoid jostling the injured wing. The hatchling watched him with those unblinking golden eyes, her breathing shallow and rapid. It took 15 minutes of careful work, sweat beading on Jackson's forehead despite the cool air, before the last cable came free. The hatchling immediately tried to stand, but her injured wing made her stumble. Without thinking, Jackson caught her, supporting her weight. The scales were warm beneath his hands, surprisingly smooth, and he could feel her heart hammering like a trip hammer. She looked at him, and he saw something in her expression shift, recognition, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. "Your wing's broken," Jackson said, examining it gently. "I don't know dragon anatomy, but I know enough about basic biology. We need to immobilize it." He had medical supplies in his pack, standard issue for cargo runners working in remote areas. Using sterile wrapping and a lightweight composite splint designed for broken bones, he carefully secured the wing against the hatchling's body. She flinched but didn't pull away, seeming to understand he was trying to help. "There," Jackson said, sitting back. "That should hold until you can get proper medical attention. Can you understand me?" The hatchling tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him wonder just how much intelligence lay behind those eyes. Then, to his shock, she spoke, not in words but in his mind, a presence gentle but unmistakable. "You helped me, why?" Jackson blinked, startled. "You're hurt," he said simply. "I couldn't just leave you. My kind and yours are not friends. We are barely allies, yet you risked displeasure to aid me." "Maybe that's the problem," Jackson replied, finding his voice. "Maybe we're so worried about what separates us that we forget what connects us. Pain is pain. Fear is fear. Those don't change based on whether you have scales or skin." The hatchling's mental presence warmed, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I am Orla," she said, "daughter of the fifth clutch of the Skyborn dynasty. I will remember this, Jackson Reeves." "How do you know my—" Jackson began, but a shadow fell over them. He looked up to find 3 adult dragons descending from the sky, their wings spanning 30 meters or more. They landed with earth-shaking thuds, and Jackson's courage nearly failed him. These were apex predators, ancient beings who had ruled this world since before humanity had discovered fire. The largest, her scales a deep crimson shot through with veins of gold, stepped forward. Her eyes blazed with an intensity that made Jackson's survival instincts scream at him to run. "Human," her voice boomed in his mind like thunder. "You have touched one of our young. Explain yourself before I reduce you to ash." Jackson stood slowly, keeping himself between the massive dragon and Orla. His hands trembled, but he kept his voice steady. "She was trapped, injured. I freed her and treated her wounds. That's all." "That is not all," Orla's voice chimed in, surprisingly strong despite her injuries. "Mother, he risked much to help me when he owed me nothing. He showed kindness when wisdom would have counseled walking away." The crimson dragon's gaze never left Jackson. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind whistling across the landing platform. Then, impossibly, she lowered her massive head until one eye was level with Jackson's face. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human," she said, "but I see truth in my daughter's words. You acted from compassion, not calculation. This is unexpected." "We're not so different," Jackson said quietly. "Humans, dragons, we both love our children. We both know fear and pain and hope. Maybe it's time we remembered that." The dragon was silent for a long moment. Then she straightened, spreading her wings in a gesture Jackson somehow understood was one of respect. "The Skyborn dynasty does not forget debts, Jackson Reeves. You have given us a gift more precious than technology or trade agreements. You have given us a glimpse of what our peoples might become if we chose understanding over suspicion." She turned to the other dragons. "Let it be known throughout Draconos Prime that Jackson Reeves of Earth is friend to the Skyborn dynasty. Let the other clutches know what transpired here, and let us consider whether the time has come to forge new bonds with humanity." Over the following months, Jackson watched in wonder as his small act of kindness rippled outward. The Skyborn dynasty opened formal diplomatic channels with Earth. Other dragon clutches, hearing the story of the human who had helped a hatchling without thought of reward, began to reconsider their isolationist policies. Trade agreements became cultural exchanges. Cultural exchanges became collaborations. Collaborations became friendships. And at the center of it all was Orla, who had recovered fully and now served as an ambassador between her people and humanity. She never forgot the human who had seen past scales and wings to recognize a fellow being in need. Years later, when the first joint human-dragon colony was established on a frontier world, they named it New Hope. At the dedication ceremony, Orla stood beside Jackson, now much older, his hair gone gray, and addressed the assembled crowd of humans and dragons. "We stand here today because one human chose compassion over caution," she said, her mental voice carrying to every mind present. Jackson Reeves could have walked away. Instead, he reminded us that the measure of a civilization is not found in its weapons or its wealth, but in how it treats the vulnerable and the powerless. She turned to Jackson, her golden eyes bright with affection. A small kindness given freely changed the course of two species. Let us never forget that every great friendship begins with a single choice to see the person, not the differences. Jackson smiled, feeling the weight of years and the warmth of accomplishment. "I just did what anyone should do," he said. "Exactly," Orla replied, "and in doing so, you showed us what we all could be." As the ceremony concluded, and humans and dragons mingled freely for the first time in history, Jackson looked up at the alien sky and thought about choices, the small ones that seemed insignificant in the moment but somehow changed everything. He had helped a frightened hatchling because it was the right thing to do. He had never imagined it would forge the future of two worlds. But perhaps, he reflected, that was how all great things began, not with grand gestures or calculated strategies, but with simple kindness, offered without expectation of reward. Humanity, fuck yeah.